Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on an awesome carbon conversion funding opportunity. We're going to be looking at an overview of the Utilization and Procurement Grants program that DOE has put out as a result of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law passed a few years ago now. My name is Alex Krauka. I am a Seattle-based consultant for USCA's Consensus Program. The Consensus Program seeks to educate the public, policymakers, industry, and other stakeholders to build a consensus on the benefits of and requirements for CCUS, as well as other carbon management technologies, such as carbon dioxide removal, methane emissions mitigation, sustainable domestic development of rare earths critical minerals. Much of what falls under the FECM umbrella we seek to support through a variety of activities, some of which you'll see listed here. So we'll have briefings and webinars like today's. We'll do workshops. We put out various white papers and research reports with the help of some of our partners at Patel and EPRI and a few others. And then we also have monthly news clips that we send out to help keep our stakeholders informed. If you'd like to subscribe to our mailing list, please email my colleague Michelle Littlefield at mlittlefield@usca.org. Quick logistics note for today. This webinar is being recorded and we will post the recording on the event page at usca.org. We'll also post copies of the presentations as well. However, this might take a day or two, so if you can just have patience while we get those things up afterwards. Regarding Q&A, we'll be holding Q&A at the end of all the presentations. So feel free to chat any questions or comments you may have in the box at the bottom of your screen. So we have three great speakers lined up for today. We've got Emily Connor, who's Program Manager of CO2 Removal and Conversion at DOE's Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management. Then we have Joe Stofa, Technology Manager at the National Energy Technology Laboratory, and Michelle Kreinock, Site Support Contractor at NETL. Emily, do we have you going first, or did we switch the order? I forget.
I think Joe is going to kick us off.
Joe's going to kick us off. So with that, Joe, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen and bring up my presentation. So let's see here. Does this look okay?
We're seeing the presenter mode.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try switching screens then. Ah.
There you go.
Oh, I had it right the other time?
Oh, you had just switched to, yep, this one.
It looks good now.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. So hello, everyone. My name is Joe Stofa. I'm the Technology Manager for the Carbon Conversion Program at NETL. So what I'm going to do is lead off today with an overview of the Carbon Conversion Program. I'll just briefly spend one slide on the Utilization Procurement Grants Program. Emily will discuss that in more detail. My main function here is just to give a general programmatic overview. So just very quick background about NETL. There are 17 Department of Energy national laboratories. NETL is the only one that is government-owned, government-operated. So we're approximately half federal and contractor staff. Think of it more akin to perhaps a NASA lab where there are feds and contractors working together to accomplish a single mission. There's the in-house research side that's more equivalent to a traditional national lab. And then there's the side I'm on, which is the programmatic side that focuses more on supporting extramural research and development. And NETL's main goal is to be the nation's premier energy technology laboratory. So when we get to the carbon conversion program specifically, what's the goal? Well, it's to demonstrate and ultimately deploy carbon management technologies through multiple carbon conversion approaches, which we'll cover in a little bit more detail here in a slide or two. We are supporting goals of a 50% reduction in GHG pollution by 2030 and carbon neutral by 2050. The carbon conversion program is focused specifically on supporting R&D that can convert anthropogenic CO2 into products. And when we say anthropogenic, what we mean is industrial gases, flue gases, or direct air capture streams. So it's basically CO2 that has been created or concentrated by human activity. We know the drivers for these are the annual CO2 emissions at approximately 5 gigatons in the US and 37 gigatons globally. And that's the challenge as well, right? The scale of CO2 emissions relative to demand for conversion products. We also have issues we'll cover a little bit later with ensuring that the R&D we support can add value. And we'll cover these in a little bit more detail. But at a high level, the carbon conversion program supports conversion technology under 3 pathways: biological uptake, what we call the catalytic pathway, and mineralization. Pros and cons to all of these we'll discuss in a bit. And on the right side of this figure, you can see the budget, both historically and looking into the future. Because we have a large portion of BIL funding, we know what that funding will be through FY26. For FY24 through 26, we do not know what the enacted budget will be, but you can see that the program's grown rapidly over the past 8 to 9 years. And right now, FY23, well, last year we were at approximately 115 million per year budget. And if the enacted budget doesn't change too drastically in the future, should continue that over the near term. So I'll mention the carbon conversion program within NETL. Earlier, I had mentioned that NETL kinds of had 2 sides: the more traditional laboratory side and then the program side. So within the more traditional side, we have R&D through NETL's Research and Innovation Center, mostly focusing on the catalytic pathway, specifically looking at some electrochemical technologies, microwave reformation, as well as reactive capture approaches. We have a world-class life cycle analysis team. And yeah, certainly we'll cover this in more detail, but LCA is vital to ensure that we hit targets for greenhouse gas emissions reductions. And then we also have a strong techno-economic analysis team. We all know that all successful technologies must add value. It's not necessarily that it has to be better, cheaper, and faster than what is out there today at its current state of development, but it has to have that potential. The carbon conversion through NETL by BIL. This is the Utilization Procurement Grants program. This is just a smaller portion of the overall BIL budget that carbon conversion directs. But we do have funds specifically going to Utilization Procurement Grants, which Emily will discuss in more detail. But at a high level, these are demonstration grants, so 50% cost share. They have to go to eligible entities, which are state and local governments and public utilities or agencies. And these grants will support the procurement and use of commercial or industrial products derived from anthropogenic CO2, subject to the constraint that they can demonstrate less emissions than incumbent products. Then we'll move on to carbon conversion through NETL. So this is the extramural research that occurs outside of NETL that's managed within NETL and funded through various mechanisms, whether those are fieldwork proposals, FOAs, or various grant programs and such. There's a robust project portfolio. We have approximately 36 projects, and that's across all of those pathways we had mentioned earlier. I'll cover the 3 pathways briefly. So we have a lot of work, and historically have been directed by Congress to have a lot of work in biological uptake by algae. Sort of a wide range of products here, right? When we think about what are the advantages of biological processes, You're using generally inexpensive energy inputs, whether that's waste heat or solar photons, and you're using those to create relatively complex molecules. Could be used for animal feeds, nutraceuticals, polymers, soil amendments. It can also be used for fuels, but the carbon conversion program within FECM specifically does not support algae to fuels. We can support catalytic pathways to fuels, but not algae to fuels, as that is specific to the mission of EERE's BETO. The advantages and challenges with this process, humans certainly have a lot of experience with agriculture. These processes are mostly enabled with what I'd call catalog engineering. So there are, of course, some exceptions here when maybe you get into specifics of dewatering equipment or certain reactor designs, but it's mostly enabled with commercial off-the-shelf equipment. And we know that biological processes can create many complex carbon molecules. The disadvantages are there are generally large areas required to achieve gigaton scale. Biological processes are kinetically slower than higher temperature or pressure processes, especially if we're depending on waste heat and solar photons. The work we support within the program, we have algae for animal feed, algae for various consumer products, polymers, animal feed, soil amendments, etc. So we just have a few pictures there showing some examples from funded R&D. When we think about the catalytic pathway, we probably have the greatest range of products possible and also the greatest opportunity for process intensification, so accomplishing large-scale conversion within small volumes and at small timescales. We have work on CO2 to fuels, to polymers, to solid carbons, alcohols, synthetic natural gas. When we think about advantages and challenges, the big challenges are the value of your products have to outweigh the cost of your energy inputs. So if you're using hydrogen, that highlights the importance of something like DOE's Energy Earthshot initiative to lower the cost of hydrogen. And we also have a challenge in that some breakthroughs may require significant funding, especially when you get into electrochemistry and catalyst. There are technologies where you know they'll work, you know they can scale, but you may not have sufficient funding to get to where you need to be at the end of the project. So that can be a challenge in some of the catalytic conversion pathways. Work within the portfolio, we have work on CO2 to solid carbon, we have work on CO2 to methanol, as well as other higher hydrocarbons. Then finally, we'll discuss carbon conversion via mineralization. So this is the most limited in terms of range of products, right? We're usually looking at something that's like a cured concrete block, so a CMU, a synthetic aggregate, a suboxide, which is kind of like a precursor to peat, so a potential soil amendment, often building materials. The reason we like to support mineralization is this is one of the few pathways we have that's generally energetically downhill or neutral, and we know it can apply at the gigaton scale, again, mostly enabled with catalog engineering. It also has the ability to address other waste streams, such as produced water or mine tailings. The challenge is the products often have a low specific value, so there's some necessity of co-locating, and shipping costs can be a large portion of product cost. The carbon conversion program within FECM was the first federal funding of UCLA's X Prize winning carbon built technology. So that's kind of curing cast concrete pieces in a CO2 stream, and then looking also at next generation technologies that can maybe have higher CO2 uptake in the final product. I'll finish up the last few slides by discussing the necessity of TEA and LCA for an uncertain future. And I always like to throw up the T and take a timeout before I present this slide to very clearly say that this is not what we think the future will be. We're not saying this is our prediction for the future. what we're saying is that when we perform TEA and LCA, it's useful to have a set of boundary conditions, right? So this is the set of boundary conditions that we often subject our TEAs and LCAs to. We don't want TEA and LCA to produce a single number. We want TEA and LCA to provide something that looks more like a synoptic map. So the map that the weatherman presents on the news every night. You know, if you're in this region, then your economics look like this. If you're over here in the inexpensive hydrogen area, then your results are X, Y, and Z. So our boundary conditions are kind of the tomorrow will look a lot like today's scenario. We continue to have this grid mix and industrial electricity prices remain where they are, and there's abundant waste heat integration opportunities. We have the boundary condition of inexpensive and abundant hydrogen. So Earthshot is completely successful. We have $1 per kilogram hydrogen. That obviously has great benefit for the catalytic pathway and general wide-scale decarbonization of industry. And then we have the third worldview boundary condition, which is the techno-cornucopian worldview. This says cost curves for wind, solar, and battery continue to fall. We have super inexpensive electricity of $20 to $30 per megawatt hour, and everything that can be electrified is. So those are kind of the boundary conditions of our TEA and LCA, and we also have other unknowns that could be related to carbon prices, DAC cost, what are other energy breakthroughs, etc. So I'll take the final moment here to just reference the website and the carbon conversion program tools. We do have a life cycle analysis kit, and we've recently published a TEA. I don't want to say equivalent. It's not quite as polished or developed as the LCA tools, but there are also a series of TEA tools available that are you can download and reference through the NETL website. And then I'll just wrap up by saying feel free to reach out to myself or Emily Connor, who's the headquarters BIL program manager, and check out the NETL website linked to below. And with that, I'll go ahead and close out. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Joe. Really appreciate you sharing that work. It's really incredible, everything that you all do at NETL, and it's a really cool portfolio that you're working on. So thank you for that. Next up, we have Emily Connor, Program Manager for CO2 Removal and Conversion at DOE's Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management. Emily, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. All right, let me make sure. Is that everybody's able to view the full screen?
Yep.
Wonderful. Great. Well, as Alex mentioned, I'm Emily Connor, Program Manager in the Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management, specifically in the Division of Carbon Conversion Utilization. And I'll be talking a bit more specifically about the particular UPGrants program that's available, and going through a bit more of the application process and the eligibility criteria. Just before I dive in, I do want to note that this FOA is released and out in the world. Funding is available. And because of that, we are somewhat limited in terms of the specificity of questions we can answer. For those of you that are familiar with government funding, the FOA is up and available on the FedConnect portal, which is the official channel for Q&A on specific eligibility questions or questions particular to your own application. So I would just encourage, if you're not familiar, to visit FedConnect. You can also review the full draft of the funding announcement through that website, and I'll kind of touch on that again, just give you some more information on that before we wrap up today. So just to note, I think Joe did a great overview, but just to say that, this UPGrants program sort of fits squarely into the priority technology areas of our office and the Office of Carbon Management, notably the conversion of carbon dioxide into products. And so that's really the focus area and what this grant is aiming to support, kind of the development and early market movers for those products. This, as Joe mentioned, is kind of one of several funding opportunities that were made available through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, kind of across the value chain for carbon management. So also, if there are other things that may be of interest or relevant to the company or group that you're representing, would encourage you to look at other funding opportunities that are being released and that continue to be released. And I did, just before diving in, want to give an overview of some of the types of products that we're talking about, and kind of the possible products that could be eligible and included under this program. We see opportunities for things in building materials, plastics and products, and also in fuels, as Joe touched on. So all of these, with the right eligibility, could be considered eligible products that could be procured and purchased through this grant. And so the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and specifically for the Carbon Conversion Program, directed us at the DOE to establish a program for eligible entities, which here are states, units of local government, public utilities, or agencies, a grant program that would support them to procure and purchase commercial and industrial products that use anthropogenic carbon oxides and that demonstrate that they significantly reduce emissions compared to existing products on the market. And so I'll go in a little bit more in depth into kind of what all of this means, but this is sort of the statutory language that helped us to establish this program. And so specifically for products and what it means, these two criteria for products to be eligible under the UPGrants program, the first is this definition that the products must use or be derived from anthropogenic carbon oxides. And this really, here we're defining this as human-caused carbon emissions, which have been concentrated through human activity. So an example of this would be things like flue gas from the power sector. If the company was able to tap into that flue gas point source, use it in a manufacturing process for a product, that product could be eligible. But as well as legacy emissions, which are already present in the atmosphere, that may have been captured or concentrated through kind of technological means. So things like direct air capture. What we're not considering eligible here would be, if you're able to kind of capture carbon dioxide through photosynthesis, you're really relying on kind of the natural mechanisms of plant biology rather than kind of the technological innovation that we're looking for here. The second criteria is that the product has to demonstrate significant reduction in life cycle greenhouse gas emissions compared to existing or kind of market available products that are currently out and available. This is sort of, underlies the goal of decarbonization that this program is supporting. And currently we have this threshold set at a minimum of 10% emissions reduction required. And this is, as Joe mentioned, why kind of the life cycle analysis component becomes critical. And Michelle will talk about this in a minute, so I won't go into too much detail. But just to give an overview, we really use the LCA process to determine, again, those two eligibility criteria and to determine what products are approved. And so we do have a process through which you as a manufacturer of one of these products submit your data to our NETL team, the LCA team over at NETL. They then review, ensure that you're kind of conforming with those two main criteria that I've mentioned, and then they either make the determination of whether your product is considered approved or denied. And so this kind of is really the first and biggest gating step to get your product up and available, make others aware that your product is eligible for this grant program. And I wanted to include a note a little bit more on kind of the eligibility and sort of the funding structure for this grant. So as Joe mentioned, this is a 50% cost share program, meaning that the Department of Energy will cover 50% of the cost, while eligible entities are responsible for covering the other 50%. And a note on the eligible entity component, as we've mentioned, this includes primarily public sector entities like states, local governments, public utilities, or agencies. But I did want to note that there is availability for additional participation and partnering through subrecipients. So a wider group of entities are also available to apply as a subrecipient, including institutes of higher education, for-profit entities, nonprofit entities, as well as tribal nations. So we do see opportunities for partnering where there might be, mutually beneficial projects that exist beyond the scope of just who's available to apply as a prime recipient. A note on kind of the estimated award amount. Currently, we anticipate offering awards of up to $500,000 with a minimum award of around $50,000. And these awards are meant to cover the cost of the product itself, not associated labor costs or other costs that you might incur as part of the project. So for example, if you're doing a construction project and able to use concrete or cement that qualifies under this program, we would cover up to $500,000 for the cost of that concrete, but not the labor or any additional work that might be needed to prep the site, for example. And then for vendors and manufacturers, as we mentioned, they need to submit their life cycle analysis to the NETL team. And I've included a couple notes there for additional contact information when these slides are available after the webinar. But we do have a few notes in there for the amount that vendors are eligible to receive. So for vendors initially that are meeting the 10% emissions reduction threshold, they're eligible to receive up to 3 million in DOE funding. Vendors that are getting close to reaching that cap, we do have a mechanism in place where you could resubmit some of your LCA data, kind of show continued emissions reductions, and increase that cap to overall availability of $8 million. And this is one area, for example, that we'd be happy, if vendors or manufacturers kind of started to reach that cap, our team is happy to engage to make sure that they have additional flexibility under the program. And I wanted to provide sort of an overview slide of how this all fits together. As I kind of went through, there are a couple parallel processes happening in tandem for this grant program, and maybe a little bit different than some of the, if you are familiar with government funding, a little bit different from how some other FOA opportunities have worked. And so starting on the left with kind of the roles and responsibilities for manufacturers of these products, the first step really is to engage with the LCA team at NETL to submit your product data. We're really happy to engage to make sure that manufacturers are clear what data is needed and to work with them in that process. The NETL team then goes ahead and reviews the LCA, where they will ultimately make the determination of whether the product is approved or denied. If you are initially denied, we do have a kind of pathway in place that you could resubmit if applicable. So again, happy to engage via the LCA team on any questions that you have there. Once a product is approved, both the manufacturer and that product and the product information are posted publicly on the UPGrants website. So this is a way that if you are an entity just kind of interested in this grant, maybe don't know much about it, you can go onto our website and see what products are currently approved, what's available, if anything there might meet your current procurement needs. And as this process is happening and as vendors are submitting their information, eligible entities are also able to start their application process. So again, these are these prime recipient states, local governments, public agencies, utilities, can work with manufacturers either through existing procurement relationships that they have, or learning that they have an approved product on the UPGrants webpage to prepare their application and then submit for funding directly from the DOE. If an application is successful, the eligible entity is the group that receives the money from the Department of Energy. So I just want to clarify, the department works directly with the entities who apply. They receive the money, and then kind of the procurement and purchasing relationship sort of works as it would typically with any other vendor that you might have. But I did want to include a few notes on the application process and kind of what we are looking for and require in the applications. So these are high level sort of top line pieces of information. Again, I would encourage you, if you are beginning to think about submitting an application or have questions, to read the full FOA announcement. There's much more detail included in that document. But at a high level, we're asking for applicants to provide sort of, how the commercial product or the industrial product will be used, and any evaluation criteria that you as the purchaser would use to sort of evaluate how the product performs. We're also asking for a letter of commitment from the approved vendor to just show that there is sort of an existing or a purchasing relationship in progress, that the vendor has sort of committed that they're willing, able, and available to ultimately provide the product. We also require at least 3 quotes, one from the product kind of in eligible under the program, and then also 2 that are from existing or comparable products on the market, basically as a comparison. This is for a couple reasons. We want to ensure that we're not funding products that are sort of out of the realm of expected costs or that would never be cost competitive in an open marketplace. And also just to ensure that the quote that is received from the vendor sort of in the ballpark of what would be expected for a similar project. Additionally, if this meets any procurement needs or objectives that the entity might have, just to make a note of that, and I'll briefly touch on those before I wrap. And then finally, just to include kind of basic criteria and justification proving that you are in fact an eligible entity, given the statutory language that we have. And to wrap, I just wanted to note in sort of a broader context of these types of procurement programs and what they're hoping to support. One that's happening at the federal level is the Federal Buy Clean initiative. And this is a policy that promotes the purchasing of construction materials and products that have, lower embodied carbon emissions or lower carbon footprints. And so this includes products like steel, concrete, asphalt, all products that could be considered eligible under this particular program. This is also happening at the state level. So I've noted a few here. Apologies if I've missed any. Feel free to provide any that we might be missing. But again, just to give an example of the types of products that could be available and considered eligible under our program. And just to wrap and give another plug for FedConnect, would highly encourage, if you are interested in learning more about this FOA, to go ahead and register via FedConnect. That way you have full access to the Q&A portal. Not only can you submit your own questions, but you can also see the answers and responses to the other questions that folks have submitted. And this is just to ensure that everybody's working off of a level playing field in terms of the information available. This FOA will be open until April 30th of 2024. So I would encourage you, if you have an LCA that you'd like to submit or an application you'd like to start, to reach out to eligible vendors. And just to begin that process, we do have flexibility and ability under this particular funding announcement to review applications on a rolling basis. So would encourage you to submit anytime before that April 30th deadline. And with that, I'll just wrap up. These will be available on our slides and on the webinar after the fact. And again, as Joe mentioned, please do reach out with any questions. We'll also have time for the Q&A portion after all of our presentations wrap. So with that, I will hand it over back to Michelle to go through our LCA process.
Thanks. All right, thank you. Share this. All right. So yeah, my name is Michelle Kreinock. I'm a lifecycle analyst at NETL, and I'm just going to give an overview of the LCA portion of this program. And I will try to be quick to allow for Q&A. So diving straight in, so we're all on the same page. What is life cycle assessment? We use it as a decision-making tool. So we use LCA techniques to help people make better decisions to improve and protect the environment by accounting for the cradle to grave impacts of their supply chain. So raw material acquisition, use phase, recycling, all of that gets wrapped up into an LCA using LCA techniques. How we help those decisions get made here at NETL, we have 4 sort of main thrusts. We establish national baselines. So we'll look at the environmental impacts of an entire industry and look at it nationwide, also regionally, temporally, and explore that. We also assess emerging and existing technologies. Comes up a lot in the carbon dioxide conversion program. Since we deal a lot with emerging technologies, we'll use LCA techniques to assess their environmental impacts. And then another big one is comparing technology and scenario trade-offs. So we can look at these emerging technologies and compare them against existing ones. We can also sort of look at what Joe described, those sort of future possibilities, and help to understand how those emerging technologies might look in those different scenarios. And all of that sort of combines to help us look at the future and plan ahead. Specifically why is because LCA is very useful to guide research and development investment. So we can take a look at different emerging technologies to understand which ones may be better than existing technologies and therefore sort of worth the investment that we're giving. We can also just look at the existing systems to improve them as they are, especially looking at what hotspots might be worth the investment. LCA is also a very data-heavy area, and so we'll find the data gaps, if there are any, and can help the government to sort of direct data collection where we need that information the most to better understand the environmental impacts. And we can also assess potential benefits from commercializing technologies. So again, very specific to the carbon conversion program, we look at the technology readiness level spectrum, TRL. So from emerging to commercialized, we look at the same technologies at every step. Some issues, sort of specific issues, challenges specific to LCA of carbon dioxide conversion systems. So these systems inherently combine two sectors, so the CO2 source, wherever the CO2 is coming from, as well as the CO2 utilization product, how this carbon dioxide is being used. There are a variety of sources and uses that can make it very complex. That diagram sort of fleshes out what Joe was showing, the three different areas that the carbon dioxide conversion team focuses on, and all of the different products that can go in. And then another challenge of this would be the comparison can get tricky, because in LCA we try to be very strict about comparing like to like, and in the functional unit sense. And if you're developing new technologies, you might be developing new products, and that function, that exact use, might need to be really well examined to be able to make reasonable comparisons with existing products. And all of that means that we need to be really consistent to have robust decision making. We don't want to be treating all working fluids was the first one I saw, all biomass-based technologies differently than the mineralization technologies. We need to be able to compare and understand them together. To help solve that issue, many years ago, NETL developed CO2U LCA guidance that specializes the guidance that exists. There are existing ISO guidances that are quite broad. We sort of get specific with them and clarify certain points in relation to how to use it for CO2U technologies. And we also were trying to help bridge the gap between the primary researchers developing these technologies who may or may not be familiar with LCA, and make sure that they're able to get workable, accurate answers using our guidance. And then we also threw in some extra stuff to minimize effort. So what this guidance ended up being was actually an entire toolkit. So we've provided an open LCA LCI database. LCI stands for Life Cycle Inventory. So that is a database in this free open source software that includes lots of inventory that we think is relevant and helpful to people in this technology space. And you can use that database as sort of a sandbox. We have an existing example of like an algae product in there that you can use to model your LCA after. And then when you build in there, you can use our contribution tool, which is an Excel file with macros that automates some of the results analysis, that can churn out specific charts that we want you to use in the LCA report template. So we also have a Word file that guides users through the whole report writing process. And then if you choose not to use OpenLCA, you can use whatever software you want. You can turn that model in as well, but we also require a documentation spreadsheet that helps us review it more thoroughly and in an organized way to make sure that we have all the information we need. But either way, you can use the same LCA report template to generate a complete report describing your methods and results. To help out with those, we also have the guidance document itself, which guides you through step-by-step the LCA development process, as well as like entire chapters of how-tos to using our tools. Truly step-by-step how-tos. We also provide model training in OpenLCA through webinars and subject matter expert support. That email address is specific to the sort of base CO2U thing. There's an up-to-date UPGrant specific email address you can use for UPGrants related things. We also provide, what's the word? videos, how-to videos, some LCA basics on our website as well. And it looks like this. So top left box, if you click on that, when you go to the website, LCA/CO2U, that top left box, if you click on it, you can download the report. Top right box will take you to those videos. Bottom right box, you can just download a zip file with everything in it, and so on and so forth. And it'll also connect you to a 45Q addendum, which I only discuss as sort of an example. So before UPGrants, we also had another situation where the preamble to the final ruling of 45Q, when utilization requires an LCA, directs people to our guidance document. And so we wrote an addendum document describing, modifying that base CO2U toolkit to update the scope and results. We need different results based on the use case to fit that need. And you can see it sort of mimics the structure, and some of the things are different and some of the things are the same. So the top left corner is now a PDF guide addendum, which is meant to be read in conjunction. So when you read through it, it will be, it will have one section that says replacement. So it replaces the same section in the CO2U guidance document. The next section might say additional information, in which case you read that additional context in addition to what's in the guidance document. And then if the guidance document section isn't in there, then that means that remains exactly the same. Yeah, and then other things like the database, if you click on that box, it leads you to the same database as this base CO2U. I go through all of that because then later this bill, UPGrants program came about, and so we did essentially the same thing. In order to serve this process where manufacturers complete LCAs, we ask them to follow this guidance plus an UPGrants addendum. So that's why I went that in depth in the 45Q. All of it's the same. That PDF file is structured very similarly. It works in conjunction with the base CO2U guidance document, and all of the squares are very similar. And then the center square is also a button you can click to get to broader information about the UPGrants program. And so I do not have time to go through every single difference between the old program and the new program, but this is just, the slides will be available. You can go through in more detail to better understand sort of the whole ecosystem of these different LCA tools that are relevant to hopefully somewhat the same users. So this is the key piece I wanted to go over for this presentation is if you're in the UPGrants program, or if you're in the CO2U program, if you've dealt with us before, you will probably have used the LCA at netl.doe.gov email address. We have a new email address, upgrants-vendors@netl.doe.gov for LCA specific questions, but any questions related to the FOA must go through the Fed Connect portal. So this is an especially important slide to sort of help navigate if you're a producer. We actually have sort of different point people for different programs. But with that, I want to make sure that we have lots of time for questions. So quick disclaimer. And yeah, I just want to jump into questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you, Emily, and thank you, Joe. This has been great. I'm really excited about this program, and we have a lot of questions coming in. So I think those who are in attendance are pretty excited and interested in this program as well. So I'm just gonna jump right in. And if you guys, if you're not answering, if you want to just kind of take a quick look just to see what's coming down the pipeline, that might be useful. The first one that, Joe, it looked like you wanted to go ahead and answer it live. Are you interested in a bio-based carbon black alternative? And that's from Joseph James.
Yeah, so I guess I would say we could be under UPGrants. It would depend on the details. So I think for us to be interested, it would need to be a biological source that was grown on a anthropogenic CO2 source. So if it's just a terrestrial plant grown in the open atmosphere, then no in that case.
Got
So
it.
part of the UPGrants is it has to be the conversion of anthropogenic CO2. And that also goes to the second question, referring to carbon oxides. So yeah, the product that would be sold by a vendor would have to be majorly produced from anthropogenic carbon.
And so that second question is the one, the BIL section 4302 refers to carbon oxides for hydrogen production via pyrolysis. The residual is solid carbon, primarily carbon black. And then which DOE programs are applicable to research in this field. And you're saying this particular one is not.
Yeah, correct. And yeah, and which questions or which programs might be eligible for that would be a larger question that I could look into, but not totally sure off the top of my head. DOE so large and there are so many offices.
So yeah, more of the story, that particular question was from Daniel Klein. Daniel, if you want to follow up with us after, we can see if there's some programs that come to mind that we can put you in touch with. Now, regarding the eligible entities, I'm treating flue gas from a commercial glass manufacturer and producing a product, soda ash, that they use to produce more glass bottles, creating more CO2 that's recaptured, and it's kind of a circular economy. But as I understand it, we would not be eligible for this unless the glass manufacturer using the product, the soda ash, is owned by a state, local government, or public agency utility. Is that right?
Yeah, I can speak to this use case generally, because it is something we're aware of, that there might be intermediate products that are the product that is actually using or reducing the CO2 emission through their production, and they ultimately go into an end product that's more consumer facing. So without speaking to that specific eligibility, that's a good example where, would encourage you to reach out. There could be a case where even if the glass manufacturer is not eligible, the ultimate person that's buying the glass might be eligible, and there might be, depending on how the LCA and the eligibility of the product looks, that could be a use case that would be eligible. So for that particular one, I would just encourage you to reach out to the LCA team or to submit questions in FedConnect, because we're kind of aware of when issues like that or when that particular use case comes up, and might have a way to be able to work with that.
Yeah, and I guess I would, yeah, thanks for that, Emily. And I guess in that case, it might be the glass bottle that's eligible, the eligible product.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So I guess that manufacturer, they're not the ones who are receiving the grant, but they benefit from those who do receive the grant will purchase theoretically more product from them, correct?
Correct. And I saw that there was another question asking about the price and cost comparison between the products, given that we request three quotes, two as a comparison quote. And that is part of what we are trying to both support, but also in the event that a product is more expensive, that the CO2 utilization product is more expensive, we're sort of expecting that to a degree. And that gap is part of what this program is trying to help cover, to make these products more attractive for entities that do want to purchase them and might want to use them to meet decarbonization goals. What we don't want to do is fund products that are over twice as expensive as what's currently on the market. So that's sort of that window that we're looking for. So I know that there was a question on kind of how the cost comparisons work when we request those quotes. So it's that twice as expensive is really the baseline that we want to be under there.
Got it. Trying to keep things reasonable while acknowledging that these newer processes might be a little bit more
Exactly.
expensive.
Yeah.
Great. Then let's see here. Does NETL's LCA methodology include the impacts of the manufacturing of the renewable power inputs, e.g. solar panels and wind turbines?
Yeah, I can answer that. We do typically include those impacts in our toolkit. We have profiles for those based on our electricity life cycle inventory, our ELCI baseline for the US, as well as super regionalized versions of those if you look into the ELCI. So that's something we do include. We also, if you're not using that database, if you're using something else, we have cutoff criteria for, I wish I memorized the section. There's a section on cutoff criteria in which you can sort of justify not using things like construction impacts and things based on the fact that it would not affect your results. So we do, as a rule, use it, but if it does not affect the if it doesn't fit the cutoff criteria, you can leave them out if it's trouble. But I'd prefer that you did.
Thank you. And then when comparing our CO2U product to an existing product, are we required to develop both an LCA for our product and the existing product? It seems like it would be a challenge since we are not as familiar with the production of the existing product as we are with our own CO2 product.
Right. Yeah, you are required to include both. Depending on your product, there might be lots of resources to choose from that already exist. We also are working on producing standardized baselines for use in products that we know that we expect to be common in these applications. And those will be put on our website specifically for use in the UPGrants program. Even if they're not up there yet, NETL has like 20 years of LCA experience. We have a unit process library of over 500 processes. You can probably find some tools to help you get there. And again, you can reach out to the UPGrants vendors at netl.doe.gov email address for some extra pointers if you need it. Yeah, so we are working to better support that side of things, and hopefully very soon. But if it's not up, there are other places to go to.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
This question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think we can kind of tackle the next two questions at the same time. So, if it's a tax credit question, that's a call of the Treasury Department. So, when it comes to like 45VH2 or 45Q, this UPGrants is independent of that. In the case of UPGrants, it's DOE making the call on whether or not the LCA is acceptable, whereas with tax credits, that's a Treasury call, not a DOE call.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that. I think that's helpful for a lot of people. We've mentioned Buy Clean. What is the relationship of DOE's UPGrants program to other agency efforts, and I'm going to add state efforts as well, on concrete procurement from the BIL? For example, if you engage with NETL on LCAs for UPGrants, does that help prepare you with any reporting requirements relating to Buy Clean? And again, I'm going to add on to that question. Same thing if you've carried out a EPD, how does that impact your NETL LCA effort?
Yeah, Michelle, I can speak to it kind of generally, and then do you want to take the LCA component?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so we do expect that many of the entities and manufacturers that would be applying under this program will probably also be preparing environmental product declarations, EPDs, also engaging on kind of broader Buy Clean initiatives. So we anticipate that much of the information would prepare you for those processes, or if you've already done them, that a lot of the information that you've kind of pulled together for that could be provided to us in your application. We don't explicitly require it under the guidelines in the FOA, but if there are relevant information or things that you thought would support your case, you'd be welcome to submit them. But I'll let Michelle speak to the specifics on the LCA.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough question because there are different state Buy Clean programs. And I'm not aware of the specifics of the federal Buy Clean yet. I'm not sure if they've put out their exact EPD rules or what PCRs they prefer or anything like that. So I will say I'd like to think that going through this process should help you. You should have a good understanding of your environmental profile, and you should have, hopefully have gained the skills, the information that you need to go through with an EPD, but I can't necessarily speak to any specifics about how these other programs want to handle it. So it's not a guarantee.
Got it. Thank you. And Joe, I think you kind of covered this already, but just to make sure, what is the difference between the LCA review process for this program and 45Q CO2 utilization? Is that, again, Treasury has their own LCA requirements for 45Q, and then you all have yours?
Yeah, well, I guess I see the most important distinction is the LCA review process, approve, disapprove for UPGrants. That's a DOE authority, whereas if we're with talking 45Q, that's Treasury's call.
Mm-hmm. Got it. All right. Well, we are about 2 minutes from time, so I'm just gonna give people a few more seconds in case they think of any last minute questions or comments. We will be. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I did answer one question and provided the link, just answered online to a question regarding where you can find the vendors that have been approved. So that is also through the UPGrants website. There's a section, if you click on vendors, that'll take you to that web page. There's nobody actively listed at the moment. That is not because we don't have interest in, a bunch of applications have been denied or anything. We're in process, we're reviewing. So I would just encourage you to periodically check back, because that is a live web page that's updated as applications are approved and new applications roll in.
Thank you for that, Emily. And yeah, I think that can really assist people kind of getting first mover advantage, if you will. If they're one of the first few vendors that get on that list, well, then kind of the world's their oyster, if you will, from the perspective of if there's 2 companies that eligible entities can deal with, then that's who they're going to use. So if you're a potential vendor interested in this, certainly encourage you to get your applications in as soon as possible. The one more question did come in. Sorry to ask a quick follow-up on 45Q. Yes, it's Treasury's call, but don't they ask NETL to support the LCA approvals for utilization under the credit?
I'll take that. Yeah, we do support the Treasury in that effort, but it is fully up to them, not only the call, but also what information they want to put out. So your other question, assuming it's the same anonymous asker, the other question on like how many have been approved, that's the IRS fully decides if they want that information public or not. So I just can't answer. Sorry.
Not a problem, but thank you for clarifying that. That is helpful. With that, we have hit time. So Emily, Joe, Michelle, thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to do this. I think this was super informational, really helpful. As mentioned, no vendors on the list now, so really encourage everyone to submit their applications, so this program can get rolling and eligible entities have groups to work with. You know, I think it's a really cool program, and I hope that you know, states and local governments take advantage, and you know, we can help the CCUS movement forward, bring down costs, and increase the industry. Any final words from any of you?
I think I'll just say, I think all of us provided kind of various ways to get in touch with us, either via our personal email or kind of the general Q&A for our respective subject matter areas. So anybody that's interested or has a question, we're happy to answer those that we can. So please do reach out.
Great, thanks, Emily. And as a reminder, we'll post the recording and the presentations on the event page. So make sure to check back in the next couple of days for that. So with that, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to our speakers, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day, week, and a great weekend.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Yeah, thank you.